What is up, everybody? My name is Jeremy and welcome to the channel. And today we're going to be taking a look at one of my favorite characters from A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones, and that is none other than Bobby B himself, Robert Baratheon. And we'll be taking a look at how he ultimately triumphed over the Targaryens, earning the nickname the Demon of the Trident. Now, I know when most people think of Robert Baratheon, they think of the fat, drunken, witty king portrayed brilliantly by Mark Addy on Game of Thrones. Or maybe perhaps you think about the Robert Baratheon that we meet in the first A Song of Ice and Fire novel, who had already been king for 17 years at that point and was much older and had packed on many a pound since his youth. But Robert was a much different figure when he was younger. He was tall, muscular, strong as a bull, and fierce on the battlefield, and was described as a maiden's fantasy. And along with his trusty warhammer, there were very few that could stand against him in single combat. And that's the Robert we're going to be talking about today. The Robert that would later become known as the Demon of the Trident. Robert was born in 262 AC at Storm's End to parents Stephen Baratheon and Cassandra Eastermont, and was the oldest of 3 siblings. He became the Lord of Storm's End at a very early age, as he watched from the shore as his parents' ship sunk at the bottom of Shipbreaker Bay during a violent storm. He would then go on to foster in the Vale under the tutelage of Jon Arryn, where Robert would meet a young Ned Stark, who was also a ward of Jon Arryn's. The two became fast friends, and later on, Robert would end up eventually falling in love with Ned Stark's sister, Lyanna. All was well for a while, with Robert Baratheon splitting most of his time between the Vale and back at Storm's End, until later on, a few years later, the Tourney of Harrenhal would come around, and it would change everything. The Tourney of Harrenhal was the biggest tournament in living memory, held by Lord Went, the Lord of Harrenhal at the time. Many seasoned and famous knights would attend the tourney, but ultimately it would come down to Rhaegar Targaryen winning the joust ultimately, and with that, having to name a new queen of love and beauty. Now, many people were expecting Rhaegar to name his wife, Princess Elia Martell, as the new queen of love and beauty, but much to everyone's shock when Rhaegar rode right past his wife and laid the crown of blue roses in Lyanna Stark's lap, dubbing her the Queen of Love and Beauty. And this is where everything would start to become complicated. Some would go on to say that Robert laughed about Rhaegar naming Lyanna the Queen of Love and Beauty, saying that Rhaegar was only paying Lyanna her due. But others that knew Robert a little bit better said that he was furious by the act, and it ultimately hardened Robert against Rhaegar. Ned Stark, who was also in attendance, remembers this as the moment where all the smiles died. Not too long after, however, Robert and Ned both hear of Lyanna Stark's kidnapping at the hands of Rhaegar Targaryen, and when Lyanna's father and brother travel to King's Landing demanding the return of Lyanna, the Mad King has both of them executed. And he also demands that Jon Arryn send the heads of Robert Baratheon and a young Ned Stark to King's Landing. But with Jon Arryn being like a second father to Ned and Robert at the time, having spent so much years in their care, Jon Arryn would refuse the order and quickly summon his banners, as they knew a war was definitely going to ensue. And here is where the beginnings of Robert's rebellion begin to take shape. As Robert goes to the Stormlands to gather his banners, Ned Stark also travels back north to Winterfell to call his banners as well. They were also joined by the forces of House Tully, as Ned Stark had just married a young Catelyn Tully after the death of his older brother Brandon, who was originally set to marry Catelyn. Together with all of the might of the Stormlands, the North, the Riverlands, and the Knights of the Vale, the rebellion would officially kick off. And it would get off to a very quick start. Robert would win many battles back-to-back, including winning 3 battles in a single day at Summerhold. In fact, during all of Robert's rebellion, he only suffered 1 defeat in all of the battles that they fought, at the hands of Lord Randall Tarley during the Battle of Ashford. Robert was clearly proving himself to be the biggest threat to the Targaryen dynasty since the days of Daemon Blackfyre and the First Blackfyre Rebellion. The war would eventually reach its climax at the Battle of the Trident, where Robert and Rhaegar would finally meet in single combat. The two met on horseback at the northern bank of the Trident, with the battle raging all around them. When the two finally met and locked horns, the fight reportedly lasted up to an hour, with Rhaegar wounding Robert pretty severely, but Robert would ultimately triumph after landing a devastating blow to Rhaegar's chest, smashing his armor and sending the rubies on his chestplate scattered throughout the river. From that point on, the river would ever become known as the Ruby Ford. It was right around this time that Robert officially announced his intention to take the Iron Throne, and seeing as Robert had some Targaryen blood on his mother's side, they used that to justify his claim, even though it was more of Robert's conquest that earned him the throne ultimately. Which he would end up achieving after Aerys Targaryen was slain by a member of his own Kingsguard, Sir Jaime Lannister, the son of Tywin Lannister, who had just recently sacked the city of King's Landing in Robert's name, clearing his way to claim the throne. Robert fought like a man possessed during the rebellion, and with his great antlered helm and his giant warhammer, they say he looked like some great horned god, hence earning the name the Demon of the Trident. Robert would then go on to marry Cersei, the daughter of Tywin Lannister, solidifying his alliance with one of the most powerful families in the realm, and securing his reign therein. He also named Jon Arryn as his hand to the king, a man who had been like a second father to him after his own parents passed away. Robert would go on to rule for 17 years before ultimately being killed by a boar during the events of the first Game of Thrones book and the first season of Game of Thrones. And I gotta say, Mark Addy really did a good job of portraying Robert in his later years when he was more drunken and overweight and kind of the boisterous Robert that we come to know and love from the show. So big shout out to him for that awesome performance, but it was a stark contrast to the Robert that he was in his youth. The young, strong, muscular, boisterous warrior that would forever become known as the Demon of the Trident. And there you have it, folks, my character analysis on Robert Baratheon, Bobby B himself, and how he became known as the Demon of the Trident and ultimately triumphed over the Targaryen dynasty, becoming the first king of Westeros that wasn't from the Targaryen line. I want to thank everybody out there for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and comment down below with who your favorite Song of Ice and Fire character is. And don't forget to join us every Sunday night for our Hour of the Dragon live streams, where we talk everything House of the Dragon, A Song of Ice and Fire, and all of the other adaptations that are coming up. So subscribe and hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming content. And as always, I want to thank everybody out there for watching, and we will see you on the next one.